Welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Commissioner Hawkins from Warren PD in Michigan, 35th year in law enforcement. Really looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the show, Commissioner Hawkins. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to it.
Of course, you started this career when you were 22 years old. That is super young. I can't even imagine. What made you get into law enforcement? Maybe give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, I was looking for something to get into at that age. Like a lot of young men and young women, I had some aspirations of being a professional athlete, and I, played high school and a little bit of junior college ball, and I started to realize that after a certain point that I would not be the next Michael Jordan, and that I would have to find something productive to do. And so I was going to school and ran into a friend of mine who was a police cadet in a city in Michigan, Southfield, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. And the city had a police cadet program. And this program totally subsidized college.
Mhm.
And around that time, I was figuring out how to kind of finish out college and things like that. And it's getting a little expensive, as most folks know. And I saw this as an opportunity to get into a line of work, or at least get exposed to a line of work and see if it's something that I would enjoy. And at the same time, I can get all of my college totally subsidized. And so I got into it, and once I got in, I fell in love with it. I saw that there was an opportunity to have an impact, an opportunity to have some influence in an area that I never thought that I would ever have any influence in. And there's a lot of activity in that city at that time, so it was fairly active. It was a lot of things that young men and women getting into law enforcement want. They want that action. They want the chases. They want to jump over fences and all that stuff in arresting bad guys and girls. And got a chance to do that, and it's been a great career since.
Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. Do you think that your sports background has helped you throughout your career? Do you think you brought any of that with you?
Oh, absolutely. The camaraderie, the teamwork, selflessness, humility.
Mm,
All of those things. If you're, and this is like a lot of fields and a lot of industries. This is a fairly competitive industry. When
mhm.
you look underneath the surface, we're competing for promotions. We're competing to see who can get the most arrests of bad guys and girls on the street. We're competing for, in some cases, for recognition. So there's a lot of competition that's involved, but it has to be healthy competition. And sports teaches you how to compete in a healthy and wholesome way, in a way that is constructive, in a way that helps to build and to build relationships and to build your personal foundation and things like that. And so throughout my career, as I moved up in different ranks and different levels of responsibility, that background in sports and how to channel energy in a positive way has been very, very helpful.
Yeah, I love that because I'm a firm believer that two things can be true at once. And so I love that you said there's this competitiveness, but it's also a team mentality. And the one thing that I recognize in like team sports is that there is a competitiveness, but everyone's still, for the most part, I'm not going to like speak, true and false statements, but for the most part, everyone wants the next person to win, because you are a part of that team, and so even though you might be competing for the same spot, if one person gets it over the other person, there's still that like uplifting nature of like, great job. Like, we're in your corner. We want you to succeed. Do you feel like that?
Oh, absolutely. We're a paramilitary organization,
Yeah.
and so that it brings a different dynamic to the whole sports analogy as well. But at its base, it's really the same. It's really about being competitive and pushing your fellow coworkers to higher heights.
Yeah.
And if this competitive spirit can be constructive and and we can make sure that it's about uplifting others, we can be competitive and we can help the organization itself to rise. And that's really what it's about. It's when you're on a team, you're competing with whoever your teammates are when you're in practice, for spots and for playing time and things like that. But once the games start, we're trying to win the game as a team. This is about uplifting the team, and it's the same way in an organization. We're competing behind the scenes, but our ultimate goal is uplifting the organization. And that's one of the things that I really like about this organization, this industry in and of itself, and about the building and watching people grow, watching someone go from coming in as not knowing a whole lot about the organization, just like you have a new person coming onto a team. They've got to learn the plays, they've got to learn the culture, they've got to learn some of the strategies that we have going into these games, and then we got to help them out when the games start. It's the same way in the organization. We bring them in, we help them learn policies and procedures and culture, how to stay safe, how to serve, how to uplift others, and then watching them grow. And then it's so exciting to watch a person go from a new player on a team to a integral part of a team, and sometimes even being the star of the team. It brings some fulfillment. It's the same thing here. I love watching a new officer come in and watch that officer grow and see that officer go from a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and in a lot of cases, being able to see this person go to chief commissioner, director, sheriff, and things like that. It's exciting.
I love that. I wanted to ask you, I had a question kind of pop in my head while you were talking. Was there something early in your career where you were like, this is so important? And then as you've maybe gotten older, started to recognize that like maybe it wasn't as important as you thought. We have two listeners here. We have, leadership, but then we also have kind of younger people in this career. Was there something where like when you were younger, you're like, this is it, this is everything, this is so important. As, you've gotten older, more mature and wise, you're like, maybe it wasn't as important as I thought it was.
A lot of it, when I first got in, it was about um, being reactive. It was about some of the splashy kind of headlines. How many chases you can get involved in, how many bad guys and girls you can arrest. So it was a numbers game,
Okay.
early on. That's kind of how you make a name for yourself early on. It's exciting. We're young, we're energetic. We see all the police shows and we talk to people, when we're younger, and that's what we want to get into. And at first that seems to be it. When you're in your first or second or third or fourth year in this business and you're doing those things, you're thinking, wow, I can do this forever. But then you start to see that there really is a bigger picture. There's some impacts that go well beyond what we see on the surface. And when I really started to see that there's more to this was I must have been in my, third or second or third, maybe even fourth year, but I think it was early on in my career, and I had already done a lot of stuff, a lot of chases and arresting and stuff like that. And I went to a call one day, and it was a suicide. Or it was a homicide. It turned out to be a suicide, but it was a call for a homicide. We got a call that there was a woman that was murdered, found murdered in a nearby city, and her boyfriend lived in our city, and so what it turned out to be is he went from our city, went to where the young lady lived. He murdered the woman there. Came back home. He lived with his mother in our city, and he and the young lady that was murdered, they had a child, and then the child, I remember it was just barely walking. The child was probably a year old, somewhere around there. And when we got to the house, we learned that the male half had committed suicide.
Mm.
So he's in his room in his parents' house. He's deceased from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The woman is in a nearby city. She's deceased as a result of homicide from him. And I can vividly remember watching this 1-year-old child walking around that child's grandparents' house, oblivious to what had just happened. And I remember thinking to myself that this child doesn't even realize that her world has just changed dramatically. And so it introduced me to this whole idea that there that we have an opportunity in this profession to have an impact on issues that drive or trigger or spark some of the violence that we have in our communities. And in this case, it was a domestic violence incident. And I always thought, if there's ever an opportunity for me at some point in my career to do something to help at the front end of this whole issue of domestic violence and interpersonal relationships that just go sideways, in order to protect these children that are involved in that are impacted by these sorts of things, that I would really want to do that. And I've had some opportunities throughout my career to really get involved in that, especially as I've gotten into positions where I've had more influence and had opportunities to become involved in overseeing or creating programs to do that. But that's one of the things when I realized that this profession is about a lot more than chasing people and jumping over fences and high speed chases and things like that.
Yeah, it went from kind of like the high speed adrenaline to like, oh wow, like I actually really have this really big opportunity to impact people's lives and a responsibility to do so. And I'm glad that you said that because I was one of those kids. You know, I experienced domestic violence in my life with my dad, and it's scary. It's really hard. You don't know what to do when you're a kid, and I was old enough to understand what was happening, but I didn't know what to do. And like you're pulled in different directions. Like on one end, you're like, I need help. My dad is going to kill someone in front of me right now. And then on the other end, you're like, well, I don't want to call the police on my dad. It's my dad. What do I do? You know? And so I, at that time, didn't really have an experience where I felt like someone, you know, came and helped me on that end of it, in the sense of like I didn't I don't have recollection of that, you know, like where I don't have recollection of there being like a it's going to be okay moment for me. And I think that if I would have had that, it would have set me on a trajectory where I felt like I could be more than that. Because I think that being in that environment and surrounded by that environment all the time, the expectation of you ending up going down that same path is the same. Everyone in my circle and my family just expected me to live that same life. And I think I wish that I would have had a mentor or someone who was telling me, hey, like, you can be better than this. You know, you don't have to live the same life as your parents and you don't have to be in these situations when you grow up. So I really appreciate you having that like deeper mission and purpose to help people in those situations, whether it be the individuals who are participating in that sort of domestic violence, or the, you know, the kids of those people. So that means a lot to me personally.
Yeah, and I know we're probably jumping way ahead here because because now we're into now my 35th year in law enforcement,
Yeah.
and you bring up this topic of domestic violence, and I was fortunate enough to have some detectives and some command officers in my department that I'm in right now that saw the importance of breaking the cycle of domestic violence, and I was fortunate enough to oversee the implementation of a program that we call Operation Cycle Break. And what that is a program that is designed to break the cycle of domestic violence. Because you're absolutely right. What we're seeing is that individuals, children who are in homes that where they experience or witness violence, particularly domestic violence, they're more likely to become either perpetrators or victims of domestic violence. We're seeing that victims of domestic violence sometimes have less than healthy relationship with their children.
Mhm.
And so we created this program in our department, again, led by a sergeant and a lieutenant and a captain in our department, whereby we're holding it's not so much about the punishment piece of it. It's about rehabilitation, and it's about saving families, and it's about accountability, and it's about making sure that the abusers in these relationships are forced to go into treatment related programs. And so whenever we go to a domestic violence related call for service, and it turns out that it indeed was a domestic violence incident, and we arrest the perpetrator, we have a a deal with our an arrangement with our judges, our local judges, whereby a condition of their bond is that they have to go through some programs that help them to deal with the issues that prompted the domestic violence issue in the first place.
Yeah.
So, and then we have, we also go out every single victim of domestic violence in our city. We have a team that follows up with these folks, and they go out within a couple of days and they check up on our victims of domestic violence just to make sure that they have the appropriate information to help them um, as they're navigating this really traumatic incident that they were involved in. And so it's a total program that involves the police department, our court system, as well as some social service agencies that deal with domestic violence. And again, our purpose with this is stopping this cycle of domestic violence. And as an aside, one of the things we learned is that a large percentage of our violent crimes in our city had a domestic violence nexus,
Mm.
over 50%, in fact. And we learned that almost 70% of our homicides had a domestic violence nexus. And so this program not only is helping us to preserve the sanctity of our families and keeping our families together, but it's also helping us to deal with violence and the violence at the very extreme that we're seeing in our communities.
Yeah. Wow. The one thing that kind of popped into my head is I think if we look at people, regardless of your situation, your profession, we look at people. I think people want to feel like they're valued and that they have value. And you having these support systems for individuals in that situation makes them feel like they're valuable. They're worth someone's time for you to help them. And then in return, on the organization side, the people who are helping feel like they have value. They are helping people to get out of these really hard situations and to set a better life trajectory for themselves. And so, if people in the community are feeling valued, and then your team is feeling like they are valued and providing value, then I think that all intersects with wellness. Now you're supporting your organizational's wellness because now they're having these interactions with the community where they feel like they're helping. And we know that at the core, you guys want to help. And then on the other side, you're helping other people to get well and to get out of maybe these unhealthy relationships and situations that they're in. So I know that when you and I talked offline, wellness is something that's really important to you. And I wanted to ask why.
Seen so many of our officers and non-sworns and civilian employees throughout the years that have struggled. Uh, I've seen families that have struggled. I've
Yeah.
seen suicides among officers, people who I love dearly in this profession. I've seen financial and emotional, psychological problems and challenges from folks I've that I've been around, that I've grown to love in my profession, in particular in some of the departments that I worked in. And I know it's tough, and I know that if it goes unchecked, that it impacts their quality of life and it impacts their families. And so it's always been important to me. I'm in my 13th year now, being a chief or commissioner of a department, and from the very outset, once I started in this type of position, I've always wanted to look out for the men and women that are in the departments that I've led. And it's important for them to know that the leader of their organization really cares about them beyond stats, beyond politics, and beyond numbers. That this truly is about making sure that they have a positive experience at work and an experience that carries over into their home. And so there's been a number of programs that I've been a part of since I've since I've been a chief or a commissioner. Right away, one of the things when I was first appointed is I supported an effort within our department to allow our officers to have a physical activity time when they're actually on the job and giving them some time during break time, carving out an hour, hour and a half when they're out just so that they can release if they so desire in whatever type of physical exertion that they felt or emotional type release that they needed during that period of time. And when I was in New York as a chief, one of the things that we started up was a therapy dog program, and this was back in late 2018 or early 2019, before therapy dogs were all the rage in law
Mm.
enforcement. This was during the time when if you when it, as a chief in the department, when you said, okay, let's get therapy dogs, you get laughed at behind your back, because
Yeah.
this is not something that fits the law enforcement culture. But I knew that if therapy dogs could provide some sort of health and wellness benefits for folks in hospitals and courtrooms and airports and some of these other high stress environments, then they had to have some impact in a law enforcement environment, because you can't get any more high stress than in a law enforcement environment. So why not try it?
Yeah.
And we tried it. We were on the first in New York to do this. And now you're starting to see these programs pop up all over the place. We're starting to see the utility of these programs. And now, we're doing things like supporting emotional intelligence programs for our
Mhm.
officers, which helps our officers to understand and to manage and to be aware of their own emotions when they're dealing with folks both within and outside of our department, as a way of encouraging empathy, of a way of encouraging positive outcomes, but also as a way for them to manage their own health and wellness. Because you said it just a few minutes ago. When they're doing these things that are healthy, they're healthy emotionally and psychologically for others, and they're right in the middle of it, then a natural consequence in most cases is that they begin to reap some of the benefits of this,
Mm.
and it helps them with their own health and wellness, their own awareness. And so health and wellness has always been near and dear to me.
There are a few things that you said that I really want to make sure I touch on because I'm like writing notes, but I love that you said beyond the statistics, beyond the numbers. And while I do understand why metrics and stats are important, and you want to make sure that there's efficacy in the things that you guys are doing and things are effective and benefiting people, and I understand that, but I love that you said it's beyond the metrics, because I think when we can take a look, like sometimes you get so wrapped up in numbers and you forget like what the mission is and like what the purpose is, and it's to help the people within the organization. And what does that look like, and what is that ROI? Like we'll use kind of
Yeah.
like those, what is that the true ROI? And it's not, it is, but it isn't, right? It's not like the cost savings for an agency. Like, yes, it is, but it also isn't. It's like it's the impact that it's having on the person, right? It's the fact that you're starting to create these things that are creating longevity in the human lives that are within your organization. Like that's the true ROI, right? Is to make sure that the men and women of the organization can have a long and successful career and a long and successful retirement and be good physically and mentally, as good as you can, and like you said, have families intact at the end of it and lives are intact at the end of it. And that's the true ROI. And so I love that you said it's beyond the stats and the numbers. It's like, how can we support the people and what does that look like? And I love that you said, why not try it? Having the like mentality of like, man, like, maybe other people laugh at it and maybe other people like think it's a little like weird or woo woo, like, and I laughed because when I started in this wellness space 8 years ago, I had the same reaction. Everyone was like scratching their head and they're like, what are you trying to get us to do? Like, cops don't do this. This is not a part of our culture. Like, no way. And now I think things are, becoming a little bit more normal and like, wellness has come a long way. But I love that mentality of like, even if people laugh and scratch their head, like why not try it? If it's helping other people over here, it might help us too. So I really like that mentality a lot. And then the final thing I wanted to touch on is emotional intelligence. I have had a lot of chiefs ask the question, is emotional intelligence trainable? And there's this question mark of these younger men and women who are coming into the career, who maybe don't have the lived experience or haven't been on the job long enough to have experienced some of these things. And now they are at a DB call and they don't really know how to have that empathy or how to relate because maybe they haven't been in that situation before. And you're saying that you have implemented various wellness programs. One of them is an emotional intelligence program. So, do you have the opinion that this is something that's trainable?
I think so. It'll take time because
Yeah,
you're right. I mean, we have a lot of folks, particularly some of our younger officers who their communication skills are somewhat lacking.
sure.
They grew up with computers and smartphones and things like that, and the face-to-face interaction and the dynamics that you have with interpersonal communications are something that a lot of our younger officers are just not have not been exposed to, and so this gives them an opportunity to become aware of those things.
Hmm.
And now, if it's just a one-off, if it's just a one-time deal where you have emotional intelligence training, you train your whole department, you check a box, everybody gets it for an 8-hour block and you never do it again for another 5 or 6 years, or maybe not ever, then it's almost a waste of time.
Yeah.
You do it, but those which you gain kind of goes away. But one of the things that we are committed to in my organization is not just giving the introduction to emotional intelligence and what it means and how it can be impactful in a positive way for them personally, but also as they deal with folks and try to get with positive outcomes with folks that they're dealing with. Um, but we have to continue with this. We've already trained our entire department about 4 or 5 months ago, and we're going to have a refresher course within another 5 or 6 months as well. And our plan is to have these refresher courses at least once a year
Mm.
to reinforce what they've become made aware of, but also this is an emerging field. This is something where our researchers are learning things all the time, and
Mhm.
so it's important for us to be aware of what some of the latest research is with this emerging field, and to integrate some of the latest research and some of the best practices that we're going to get over the next year or next 2 years as more departments are doing this and they're giving feedback of what worked and what didn't for us to integrate those things into our formal structure program that we have right now. And so I think that this is something that is absolutely necessary. Most of our officers' interactions with people out in our community are of a non-threatening nature. Most of our interactions don't result in, or nor do they require any actual use of physical force. They're interpersonal and they're communicative in nature. And so if we can help to sharpen the communication skills of our officers by helping them to understand what their own emotions are and how their own emotions impact their relations and their interactions and outcomes with others, then that can help to sharpen those communication skills. That can lead to better outcomes.
Mm.
So these 80 or 90% of the interactions that they're having with folks out in our community will be much more pleasant, much more constructive, and have much more positive outcomes. We're excited about this, and I think this is the evolution of law enforcement as we see it. There's some technological advances that we're seeing that are evolving, that are changing law enforcement, but you have this whole idea of wellness and emotional intelligence
Mm.
that is really coming to the forefront. And most chiefs and commissioners, directors, and upper level folks in law enforcement are really starting to understand. that we really gotta sharpen and do what we can to make the most important resource that we have more effective and impactful. And that resource is of course the folks that are working for us.
100%. I I really appreciate that you talked about short-term versus long-term strategies. And I always like make this correlation, and you can say this in a really simple way. If you go to the gym one time a year or even like one time a month and you want to be like jacked, like you want to get ripped, you want to have a six pack, it's probably not going to happen, right? Like you have to have that consistency to see the results long term. And there's so much science and data to support that short term trainings are not as effective as that long term consistency. And so I appreciate that that's the approach that you take of, hey, we're not going to do this one time and then never again, and then expect everyone to be at the top of their game in that particular module or whatever it is that you guys are trying to train. But we're going to make sure that this is something that's consistent and that we're reinforcing over time so that we make sure people understand it on a regular basis and can be at the top of their game and can get that like quote unquote six pack over time. So I always tell people that I'm like, hey, like it doesn't have to be every single day. But if you just do it one time and never again, you're probably not going to get the results that you're looking for. And so having the long-term perspective, I think, is really important. And you had told me offline that, wellness does go beyond training, and you guys obviously are doing a lot within your organization. If there's anything else you want to highlight, I want to give you the floor to be able to do that. But I have a follow-up question to that. How do you get people to prioritize themselves? How do you get people to take advantage of the things that you are offering organizationally? And how do you get them to be in a space where they're prioritizing themselves and they understand that it's okay if something affects them? And it's, in fact, encouraged for them to reach out and take advantage of the things that you are offering. So it's a two-part. If there's anything else that you're offering that you want to highlight, and then how do you get people to do it?
Well, I take the second one first, and
Okay.
I think it's important to have these wellness initiatives that are led by the folks who are going to be impacted by it.
Mm,
I've seen so many programs, whether they're crime strategy programs, whether they're community policing programs, or whatever it may be, where they came from the chief or the deputy chief or somebody that's high up in the organization. We put it together, we tell them this is what it's going to be, get a little bit of input for them so we can check a box, and then we go forward with it. But what I found throughout my time as being a leader of an organization is that these wellness programs won't have any longevity if they are not led by the folks who are being impacted by it. And
mm,
so we have to, so the first thing is, putting it out there. Here's how this can be beneficial both personally and professionally for folks in our organization. Here's some of the resources and some tools and some of the support that we can offer. Um, how can we bring this vision to life? And what I found in all three organizations that I've led is that there are always folks within the organization that are chomping at the bit to become a part of some sort of strategy that helps the organization in terms of health and wellness. And you always get these leaders who emerge. And usually you get leaders who are respected among the men and women of the department. And they help to put this together. They know where the gaps are. They know where the opportunities are. They know what some of the unique challenges are within that organization because they know the people. They've come up as, from the very beginning to where they are in the organization. So I think buy-in is critical for buy-in purposes to make sure that we have folks who are outside of our command staff who are leading this.
mm,
Um, and in terms of some of the things that we're looking at right now, we're constantly um, scanning and assessing our folks to see where are we having some struggles in our organization? And a lot of times we can look at some of the discipline and some of the behaviors that are not up to our standards within our organization as a starting point. And when we've seen a lot of times with some individuals who are having some challenges with from a health and wellness standpoint, we start to see excessive absences. We start to see increases in citizens' complaints. Performance in general starts to decline. And once we take a deeper dive, I've put the mandate to our folks to look at those who are having those sorts of troubles, and let's take a deeper dive to see what's causing some of these things. And
Yeah.
then we start to see a common theme that that will perhaps emerge with some of those folks, and we try to build our wellness program around some of those things. That this may be a domestic violence issue. It may be a uh, uh, the interpersonal communication skills with their spouse or significant other. This could be something with where they're having some issues raising children. If we start to see a theme like that within our organization, then we can get with some trusted social service agencies or others who may have some expertise within our organization that can help us develop unique plans that are specifically tailored to our organization to at least start the conversation with our health and wellness program. But it's important to get folks involved that are here, empower them, give them the resources, some support in order to start and to drive these programs and continually assess what the challenges are. Our challenges 5 months ago may be a little bit different than they are today. Next year, they may be a little bit different. So we may have to have some tweaks and some adjustments to our health and wellness orientation within our department. So we've got some good folks within our place, some engaged folks, some ones who within our organization who understand the importance of it, and we're leaning on those people.
Yeah. I think when it comes to wellness, and this is what you had said about like reassessing, there's never like a destination. It's never like, all right, we arrived. Like that's it. Like, we're good to go. And so I really like that you're saying that, like, hey, like people evolve, times evolve, things change, the needs of our people are going to change. And so we have to be able to have that mindset of, being able to develop strategies that are effective and be able to evolve with our people and with the times. And I also really appreciated that you took a look and you said, okay, these behaviors that we're seeing in performance, or, maybe like you said, it's excessive sick time or use of force or whatever it is, that these are symptoms of something beneath the surface. And how can we identify what is going on beneath the surface and then provide the resources that are required for that individual? And again, it kind of goes back to that it's not a one size fits all. But I appreciate instead of just being like, oh, well, this person is taking a bunch of sick time, like we're going to, you know, I don't know. I don't know what word I'm thinking of, but you know what I mean, judge them or like, but you're like, hey, how can we help them? And I think that having that mindset is going to build trust over time because now the people within your organization, it goes back to what we said before, like how do you get people to do it? From the conversations I've had, a lot of it is trust too. And if you have someone who's struggling and the organization helps them, other people are watching that and other people are going to be like, wow, that person got help and now they're like A plus, and they're like back at their like full capacity now. And so now I feel like if I'm struggling, that the department has my back too. So I really appreciate that mindset. And I also wanted to kind of like give you a little bit of a, not a shout out, but anyone who's listening, you have a larger organization. You have over 300 people within your organization, correct?
Um, no, we're closer to 400, but yeah, right in
400.
there. Yeah, we've got 300 and or 280 or so sworn officers, and we have another 70 or 80 or so non-sworn civilians in our place.
Yeah, so it's a larger organization, and From my experience, the larger the organization, the harder it is to build culture and the harder it is to kind of get the messaging across to everyone so that they know that they're supported. And so, to what you said earlier, your strategy for buy-in and making sure that everyone feels supported is to empower the people within your organization to kind of take charge and run with these programs and get the messaging out there from more of like maybe a peer-to-peer type situation. Is that correct? Yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of we've got some very talented people in our organizations, not just mine, but any law enforcement organization. There's some, what you'll find in most organizations is that you're going to have some subject matter experts in some of these things. And they're in most cases more than willing to offer their services and their help to build programs like this. And and if they're not subject matter experts, then they know someone who is. But the point is getting somebody that's engaged,
Yeah.
somebody who is passionate about this. In all of our organizations, we have somebody within that organization who's passionate about this. And giving them that opportunity to really build this program is what I found has been the most effective way for longevity.
Yeah. I have two final questions for you before we wrap for the day. One is in the context of leadership. What is the greatest lesson that you've learned as a leader or leadership lesson that you've learned?
Humility.
Mm,
The more time I get on the job, the more things I learn. The more accolades I get if I get them. Um, the more I learn that humility is what I value in a leader. Because people, once you become a chief or a director or CEO of some organization, people already know that you've accomplished a lot. They know you've got this resume of doing all sorts of things, and you've done all these fancy things, you got all these fancy titles. But what they really want to know is, who are you in this for?
mm,
Is this about you, or is this about the organization? And one of the first thing in the organization that I'm in right now, this is the third organization that I've led. In my first day when I came in, and I truly meant this, and I truly mean it now, and I'll mean this until my time is done in this organization. I sat down with every group that I met with, and I let them know that this me coming into this organization is not about me. I've got 34, 35 years into this profession. This profession has done great things for me. It's allowed me to go places and meet people and accomplish things and raise children and all these other things over time. I've gotten all that I need from this organization. What my passion is right now is giving back.
mm,
I want to give back some of what was given to me over the course of 3 decades in this profession. And so this is not about me coming in and saying how great I am and how important I am. This is about me coming in and saying I want to be a part of a team. I want to find out who has the passion in this organization, who wants to help work as a team to take this organization from either good to great or great to better.
mm,
And so what I hope is that that humility and that authenticity comes out to folks, and they understand that this is not about me. This is about moving the organization forward. And I know when I was a younger officer, and as I kind of came through the ranks, the men and women that I most passionately wanted to follow were those who were humble, those who were passionate, those who were genuine, and those who truly wanted to connect and who truly cared about me, who
mhm,
cared about the person that I'm working with, who cared about the organization. That overall humility. So when people ask me this question, to me it's easy. To me, I think humility in a leader especially a leader who's already respected and accomplished and already has a bio and a resume that shows that they've done something, but you show true humility. That's how you get people to work with you in order to take your organization from wherever it is to the next level.
Thank you. I love that. My last question for you is for the younger generation, someone who's brand new, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. What words of wisdom would you give to someone earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
I say take care of yourself and spend time with your family.
Mm,
I spent so much time when I was going through the ranks in order to become a chief and a commissioner and all these things to reach that level, and I missed a lot personally. I missed a lot in my children's lives. I missed a lot in terms of spending time with my spouse. I missed a lot of time with friends and other family members. And now that I look back, I realize that that time can't be recaptured.
mm,
You can't go back and change that. And so what I would recommend to our young people coming into this profession is have fun. It's a great profession. Enjoy yourself, go out there and help our communities, help uplift our communities, help uplift your the organization that you're a part of. But don't forget about yourself. Don't forget about your own wellness. Don't forget to sleep well. Don't forget to eat well. Don't forget to take care of your body. Don't forget to spend time with your parents. Don't
mm.
forget to spend time with your brothers and sisters and other friends. And once you start having families, don't forget to spend time with your significant others. And if you start having children, spend time with your children. And because um, it's great to do great things in this profession, but we can't sacrifice a lot of personal things, important personal things along the way.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Commissioner Hawkins, thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So
Thank you.
thank you. If there's anything I missed, I'll give you the floor, but that's all I have for you.
No, I think it was a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much.